Hey guys, what is up and welcome to a new NVIDIA daily update video. So today, as per usual, let's go over NVIDIA. Let's talk about what is happening in this Kangaroo market and I'll give you my thoughts moving forward and all of that good stuff. So as per usual, ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoyed, don't forget to hit that like button. This is not financial advice. I am not a financial advisor. And of course, if you enjoy my technical analysis, thoughts in the charts, etc., well, I do share my thoughts with my members every single day, especially on, even on days like this where, the past few days has been very, in the markets. But nonetheless, definitely check it out for just $3 a month. You get access to my thoughts, post updates, mainly on Tesla stocks, sometimes other stocks, or for $5 a month, you get access to everything in the first tier, $3 tier, but also access to the NVIDIA updates that I constantly post, again, as the market is trading every single day. But jumping into it, NVIDIA closing the day up actually 1.7%, closing at pretty much $116 per share, which honestly, all things considered, isn't the worst thing in the world, mainly because it was down much more. Came down to barely peeking its head into the 109s today, which is not too far away from my 107-ish target. So it got pretty close. It got pretty darn close. It seemed impossible up here, didn't it? Right now it's suddenly not so impossible. The market's really good at this, guys. The market's really, really good at this. It just, man, it's impressive. It really is impressive how good the market is at doing these things. But jumping into it, so NVIDIA is still in a bit of a pickle. It's a tough one. I'm not gonna lie. This one's a tough one, mainly because this stock is moving up and down almost 9% daily from like the highest to the lowest or the lowest to the highest point, right? For instance, like back here, we moved from the highest point to the lowest point, 11%. Here from the lowest point, if you bought the dip and sold at the top, 7.5%. Here from the top, if you shorted it and to the bottom, for instance, from again the top to the bottom in this case, 9.5%. And then today we went, assuming you got the top, let's say almost 9%. Like that's pretty crazy, man. Like that's pretty crazy. I'm not gonna lie, that's pretty wild. But in terms of technical analysis, what does this mean? So before we bring out the indicators, just looking straight at just raw price action, right? It's a bit of a difficult one. I'm not gonna lie, it's a bit of a difficult one. Number one, we have the market gapping up, right? The market's gapping up on news, the fact that Trump apparently might actually, oh, not this one, sorry, this is the wrong one. This was something else. Let me just quickly find it. This one I think it is. This is the first one I could find, whatever. Lutnick says that tariffs compromise announcement likely tomorrow, essentially rolling back tariffs on Canada, Mexico. Markets, obviously liking that. It's capping up a little bit on that. Well, more than a little bit, decent amounts, right? This is where the problem comes, right? So NVIDIA, QQQ is in a spot where, it's pretty close to a massive support. Like if there's a spot for QQQ to start looking for a potential bounce, we've arguably hit that in the morning, or we're damn close, right? We're damn close. The thing that's kind of perplexing on NVIDIA is this, because if the market does bounce, if QQQ does find that bounce and the market, maybe does, remove tariffs and the market does bounce, you would only expect NVIDIA to follow. There's no way it wouldn't. But just strictly off of the way it's closing right now and other factors I'll go over obviously in this video, I'm hesitant. I want to long the stock. I really do, because NVIDIA, it's NVIDIA, right? It's a phenomenal stock, but it's hard for me to long the stock because it's just so uncertain. Like there's something about this right now that's not really, let me explain. I don't know. I feel like I'm just talking too much and let me just actually talk about it. So first and foremost, right, we had this area right here that was a support, right? Obviously, massive support over here on that DeepSeek news, right? And then, of course, even acted as a bit of a support for about 2 days over here before we had that massive sell-off yesterday. The issue I have is this. Today, we pretty much came right back into that level, and you can see we essentially took this area that was a support, right? And we kind of are taking it and turning it into a resistance, right? We're almost turning it back into supply. Okay. That's not really ideal. On the 1 hour, you can take a look at that. But, the 1 hour showing actually a little bit of a different picture. The 1 hour shows us breaking out of this wedge and actually coming back in for pretty much a perfect retest. Like, perfect retest. Like, this would be the most textbook move you can ask for on a descending wedge breakout. So it's like, okay, so that's a little bit contradicting. Which one is it, right? Are we breaking out of this descending wedge and we just go even higher? Or are we actually just getting rejected by this supply zone? And, this is going to be a problem because, we technically on this, trend line over here, you can see this one here, we broke down below it and are seemingly turning it into a resistance as well, which, is like a double confluence in this area. Like, which one is it? You know what I mean? Like, there's just no, it's not obvious to me which one it is. And that's the thing I really don't like right now. Like, it's really annoying. Like, which one is it? Like, which one is the one that's going to play out? I don't know, which is why I'm not trading NVIDIA right now, because I generally don't know, right, which one's going to play out, because there's just a bullish and a bearish perspective that are both very prevalent, both very much there. And both have a pretty good chance of playing out. And they both look very clean for that respective side, the bullish and the bearish. The bullish, of course, being that descending wedge breakout, retest, so far so good. And we're getting a gap up in the market versus this bearish breakdown. And now we're taking clearly an area that was support into resistance. Okay, bit of a contradictory there. I'm not the biggest fan of that, I'll be honest, right? I mean, take into account the fact that obviously NVIDIA is, definitely on the more oversold end of the spectrum over here. As you can see, we're pretty much at the bottom end of the Bollinger Band. That's technically a good sign for the bulls, right? It's a little bit, it's oversold, that's good for the bulls. But again, I wouldn't say that's enough for me yet to, really long the stock. I need to see more, and I'll go over what I want to see very soon. And then you also have the weekly. It's kind of trying to break down. It's like pretty much there, but it's not there just yet. It's like peeking its head there. It's almost like, touching its tiptoes into the water kind of thing. Is it or is it not? I mean, this is a weekly candle. This will take the rest of the week to ultimately find out, right? If it actually breaks down from here or, gets a closure below this level, which honestly is pretty much below 116 roughly. We'll see that at the end of the week, of course, but that's something else to watch out for. Which one is it, right? There's just contradictory kind of situations here. Then you have the, if I bring out, these bands are oversold, obviously, but if I bring out the Bollinger Band, remember how I was talking about how it got really tight here? Now that we're hugging the bottom end of the Bollinger Band, that usually is not a good sign, because that usually means we're going to, expand the bands, but in this case, expand them as we're making our way down. It's just, there's so much conflicting noise on NVIDIA right now that it's not often I look at NVIDIA stock and have this much, confusion and just different mixed signals, right? Usually I'm pretty confident, like, when we had this massive bearish engulfing, I was completely out. I completely avoided this. When we were up here, right, I was talking about, hey, it's a trendline resistance, pretty simple stuff. We're probably going to reject here. There's a higher chance than not, and might as well wait for the breakout if anything. We rejected, and we came back pretty much almost to the opposite end of the spectrum, right, which seemed impossible at the time, but pretty much here we are. So this is now a situation where it's very perplexing. Now, if I bring out the EMAs, right? The EMAs are very interesting as well. Also a bit perplexing in a sense. On the daily it's bearish. I will admit on the daily it is bearish. They're all crossed over to the bearish side. Then 8 EMA, which is the green one, the 21 EMA, which is the red one, and the 50 EMA, which is the white one, right? Obviously, when they're in this order, that's bearish, right? The stock is obviously in a very decent, pretty decent downward momentum. So, work needs to be done to fix this, right? So essentially what I'd want to see is I'd want to see NVIDIA, at the very least, I'd want to see it, like at the bare minimum, it needs to recapture the 8 EMA, which is, at the moment sitting at 123. Obviously it'll move down tomorrow. So tomorrow it'll probably be sitting closer to like 121 or so, but that needs to get recaptured. That needs to get recaptured because as right now, if you compare it to pretty much any stock, for instance, AMD, Google's a good one. You can see pretty much perfect rejection the last 2 days on the 90 or the 8 EMA. Same with Amazon, just can't close back above it. We want to get a closure back above the 8 EMA, right? That usually slows down the bleeding. Kind of like what happened here, you can argue even, right? You can see right here when we were on the DeepSeek news getting sold off, we got rejected by it pretty aggressively. Then we got a nice little closure up here. Then we started turning it into support over here and we started rallying, right? So that's, a good sign, right? That's a sign that, okay, at the very least, the bleeding should stop. This was a bit of an exception of a move, I would admit. But nonetheless, just the point is the fact that once that's recaptured, the bleeding should stop. We're not there yet. Now, granted, we're pretty far away, even for the 9 or for the 8 EMA. So, we could come back up to retest that as early as tomorrow, which again will take us to about 122. But, that could still give us a massive rejection and we could still potentially close below. So very, very mixed signals. But the thing that's really making me, extra cautious on NVIDIA and why I'm not just jumping up and down and for joy on, buying this dip on NVIDIA. And I'm being really careful with NVIDIA right now. It's a stock I've been very good at being careful of because I don't really get FOMO with the stock, which has avoided, I've avoided a lot of pain on NVIDIA, substantial amount of pain on NVIDIA actually, because I don't get FOMO with the stock, right? Anyways, so the thing I'm a little bit hesitant about is this, and this is where the weekly comes in, right? Usually the higher time frames triumph the lower time frames. And the thing that's making me, again, not super ready to just buy this dip and hope it works out is because I want to see confirmation. And not only confirmation, but I'm also seeing some potentially dangerous signals, which can get alleviated by the end of the week, of course. But we have the 50 EMA, right? So number one is the 50 EMA. So you can see we're pretty much below it. Now, obviously, again, like I said, candle closures are important, right? It's not just going below it, it's closing below it, and even better, staying below it. So again, like I said, we still have 3 days to the week. So let's see how the week closes. But essentially what I'm saying is that NVIDIA needs to pretty much close above at the very least above 116 for the trend line, but ideally above about 117 and change, 117 and a half for the 50 EMA to close back above it. Why? Because it has never closed a weekly candle below the 50 EMA since this substantial rally has begun on NVIDIA. And getting a weekly closure below the 50 EMA would be bad signs, right? That would not be a good sign. The last time it got an actual convincing close below was here. This was back when the stock was still like 22 bucks, of course, but nonetheless, kind of same idea. You can see very nice rally, constantly held it, right? Had a bit of an, iffy over here on this candle down here when it was $5 per share, which is crazy to think about. But nonetheless, the point is the fact that, it had a really nice rally. Then what happened? We had the EMAs turn a bit bearish, right? The green crossed the red, the 8 crossing the 21. Okay. Warning shots, but not necessarily the end of the world. We held the 50 EMA here. Okay, it's not too bad. Kind of got back above it, whatever. But the point is that once we convincingly closed this kind of weekly candle below it, look what happened after that. Everything just kind of went down, right? And we just started trending downwards pretty aggressively as well. And this is the thing I'm kind of worried about, right? This is the thing that we need to alleviate from NVIDIA, because this is the last time it happened. This is the last time it actually closed, a weekly candle below that 50 EMA after being in that uptrend, which is essentially what it's in right now. You can see massive uptrend. It didn't even come close to it for like, it literally just, it arguably short squeeze or whatever you want to call it. Parabolic run up, very parabolic. But now there is a chance that momentum is fading, right? But again, I don't want to jump to conclusions yet. This is not a time to jump to conclusions, right? Things can change, especially in a market like this, especially now that Trump, I don't know, maybe the tariffs get completely revoked and suddenly the market's happy and we rocket and hey, we get back above it, right? So let's not jump to conclusions yet, but it is something to watch out for on the weekly time frame to see how we close, because there is that risk right now. But as if that wasn't enough, the other risk is the fact that the 21 and the 9 have crossed bearish. You can see for the first time since this rally has also begun. So if you go all the way back here, right, you can see it was pretty bearish this whole time. This is that same spot we were just looking at, right? It officially crossed bearish. And then of course you can see, it had a bit of a, confusion signal here, which is why usually I like for it to happen even above the 50 EMA, it's even better. But nonetheless, once it actually, ultimately crossed bullish and both of them got above the 50 EMA, now obviously this was a pretty parabolic move. It's not usually this parabolic, but the point is the fact that we went on that massive run up. We went on the massive run up and NVIDIA exploded, right? It absolutely and utterly exploded, and it wasn't even close. And even when we had this substantial sell-off here, it barely even got to the 21 EMA. But the point is the fact that they both stayed bullish the whole time through. They both stayed fully crossed over until now. And this is a bit of a sign of weakness. So what this tells me is this: if NVIDIA does hold the 50 EMA by the end of the week, and we don't get that confirmed bearish sell-off, because again, this would be very bearish. This would, like, NVIDIA would make its way. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised to see double digits at that point, honestly. Again, I'm not jumping to conclusions yet. Let's not jump to conclusions. Not yet. It's still too early. It's still too early. We have to see how the week closes. It's very important. But if we do not close below it and we do not break down, this still will give me some signs, the fact that NVIDIA probably isn't making its way back to fresh all-time highs anytime soon. It's probably going to take some time. It's probably going to take a few weeks at least, if not maybe even a few months at least. Why? Because of this bearish crossover. This tells me that even maybe the overall bigger trend momentum hasn't fully fallen off. The shorter term, for the move that would take us to all-time highs, with these two crossing over like this for the first time also since this overall rally has begun like 2 years ago, that does tell me the fact that momentum is still slipping. Momentum is still slipping, even if it's not going to be an overall grand slip. Essentially, you can say if we get this confirmation, it's still slowing down. It is still slowing down, and the momentum to the upside from here for NVIDIA, at least as of right now, just feels like it's just, even then it's still just, it really wouldn't be there until I see both of these cross back over to the bullish side. That's when the momentum can really return. So if we hold this, by the end of the week, we'll know. There is a chance that NVIDIA pretty much dances between this kind of 117 range to as high as, honestly, like 130, low 130s. That could be the next range that we kind of get stuck in for potentially even a few weeks before one of these levels snaps. We either get a cross back over, we get back above them, they cross bullish, and we make our way to fresh all-time highs, and probably well beyond that. Or we unfortunately snap down below and we begin the actual true correction on NVIDIA. So all I'm trying to say is this: NVIDIA, I think it requires patience. A lot of people like to try to, sometimes myself included, admittedly, not necessarily on NVIDIA, but other stocks, sometimes Tesla. they buy the dip too quickly. They buy the dip too quickly and they just get burned. And, people have been buying the dip too quickly on NVIDIA. In fact, people are not even buying the dip. They're buying the rally on NVIDIA based on the comments I saw up here just to get burnt. Like everyone that was screaming to me up here that NVIDIA was going to 160, they're now down almost 20% in 2 weeks, something like that. Pretty insane, pretty intense, man. That's pretty intense. So you got to be careful, right? You got to kind of wait for these slightly better confirmations. Yeah, you won't buy the bottom. Yeah, you're not going to get the best possible entry ever. Oh my God, I bought it at time. I take the bottom, guys. I bought it within a cent of the bottom. Like, yeah, you won't get that. But man, at least you'll avoid a lot of this pain. You'll avoid a lot of this pain and you'll enter on what in theory would be nice, better, higher risk or lower risk, higher reward, bullish reversal type situations. And that sometimes is just better than trying to hope that you can bottom tick a stock, which especially in a market like this, in my opinion, it's difficult, right? When NVIDIA is going sideways, that's when the Bollinger Bands, for instance, is very useful. But when we're very much trending in a direction like this, in this case, at the downside, they're not as useful because you can stay oversold for a very long time, just as you can stay overbought for a very long time when NVIDIA was just pretty much only rocketing up on the daily chart. So you should be really careful when it comes to trend. If there's no trend, the Bollinger Bands and my other strat, which I talk about, right? Bollinger Bands and the mean reversion, very useful. But when you're trending very aggressively in a direction, it's less useful. And this is when you bring out the trend indicators like the EMAs like this, for instance. And that's what gives you a better idea of trend. So anyways, I'm going on and on and on, but you kind of get the point. So that's just kind of my perspective right now on NVIDIA. Very mixed on the chart. It's just, I don't know. I don't even if it holds up really well, I don't see that much upside for NVIDIA. Like at least well past like 130s. Like I think 130s is like the best we'll get if we do get a snap back up from here, which we could. But even just based on the weekly, the momentum is definitely slowing down for NVIDIA, unfortunately. Like I'd be pretty surprised to see all-time highs and, essentially a break above the mid 130s. Honestly, anytime soon. Like it might take months, unfortunately, which, it is what it is. But I don't know. It's just the momentum just feels like it's definitely drying up on the stock and we're just consistently making lower lows. There's work to be done, to say the least. There's work to be done on the stock. In other words, a break above 140 would be something that's obviously very beneficial for the bulls and can bring that momentum back. But until then, we could be in a bit of a lull period for NVIDIA. But nonetheless, that's all I got for you. Thanks for watching. Long ass video. See you tomorrow. Peace.